Hey everyone, it's Joe Glines here in Dallas, Texas.
Yeah, and Jackie here from Copenhagen.
So, am I sharing my screen? I am.
Yeah, you
Yes.
are.
Good.
I'm seeing it.
Good. Okay. So, I was talking to Jackie earlier. I was working, trying to think. Actually, let me back up a step. I was getting ready to do a bunch of stuff on my YouTube stuff, videos, and I said, you know what? Should I really be spending my time on cranking out YouTube videos? Before I start doing that, let me at least do a little mental exercise to say that's the right place for me to be spending my time, right? Because I hadn't really ever stepped back and said, because lately I've actually said, hey, you know what? I'm going to treat my the automator as like a business and actually try to make money. Crazy thought. So I started working through it, and I said, okay, well, what, as far as the automation side goes, what are the different kind of channels that I'm looking at that are possible things that I could quote unquote sell or make money at? So column H here, that was the YouTube thing. Then there's teaching to masses, like on Udemy. And so I have three, or Jackie has the one with me, Hot Strings course on Udemy or Skillshare. And then teaching specific audiences. So this would be, a much more niche audience, but charging in like a $200 to $300 price point for the course. So it's very high level, like statistics is really my background. That one I can handle no problem. And then I could be doing consulting because I don't want to do the programming, but I can, get jobs, which almost every week now people will reach out to me to try to hire me for work. And so usually what I do is I'll hire someone else to do the work, and I'm the front person and make sure everything's working right. And then there's creating and selling, actually just creating software on its own. And then we had talked about creating like libraries of code, especially AutoHotkey, that people could pay for access to, and everyone could, that way, like people like Maestria and stuff, they could develop their code and get paid something for doing, for doing that work. So we would have a library of it. And then I said, oh,
And
yeah, go ahead, Jackie.
yeah, I was just thinking while you were talking, one of the examples that hit me right when you said it was stuff like Cloud HK. Not
Right.
that but it's something that's online and it's a resource that you could use, and it might get extra features or have
Right.
a free version and a premium version or whatever. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. And it boils down to, right, we all, and me too, I'd love to be able to just give everything away for free. But when you do that, then I have no incentive to go create the things other than just being a good guy and I like doing that. But what if we actually got paid something for doing that? And that, that's the whole capitalist idea, right? When you actually get rewarded for what you do, you'll do more of it. So that's why, the main reason why we were actually talking about it. And so anyway, so that was there. And then I said, okay, now across each of these things, what are the different dimensions, kind of things I want to take into account? So there's, in price I can sell for, or profitability is a better term. All of these I rated on a scale of 1 to 10. And even though that doesn't quite, quote unquote, make sense, I did it so I could multiply across them and come up with a sum value, a weighted value, just to help me kind of get an idea, right? So there's the price I can sell it for, my level of interest in that topic or doing that thing, the potential size of the audience. Then they're actually they're red because they're inverted. So when you rate them like a one is good instead of I didn't want to have to rate investment time as a 10 and then have to remember, well, 10 is actually good. So I reverse coded them. So here you'll see low scores are good. So but they're red just to remind you that. So the amount of time it'll take up front. And then after you do that initial time, as it scales and you get more customers, how much more additional costs are there? And then instead of doing the investment time, it's cost, right? The investment, is there an outlaying of cash you'd have to do? So that's what I was working through. Now let's go ahead and take here a first look at YouTube, because you do, by the FYI, so I have, last I checked, I think around 2,500 subscribers. I'm making right now around $80 a month, roughly, which isn't chicken feed, but for me, that's, that's not much money. I'll take it, but it's obviously not why I'm doing stuff. Now people who have, 100,000 subscribers, right, they're making some good money. But anyway, so can I really make, money in this? Because AutoHotkey is so niche, I don't think there's a lot of money there. There's other things you can do, like Patreon and some other stuff. I have a high level of interest in it. The audience size, this is where the scale kind of fails, because it's above 10, right? It could be huge. Investment time, it's a little bit of time, but it's not terrible. But these two are great, right? Because there's no more addition, whether I have 1,000 people watching it or one person watching it, there's no more work. And there's no really upfront cost. I already have everything. There's no real cost to it. And this, just to explain it, this is here's where I take the inverse of these. So this would have been like a 6 and a 9 and a 9. And those get multiplied at times these, and it comes up with this weighted number. Just so the 56,000 number itself is totally gobbledygook, except for the fact I have the same number across these other things. And that's where the weighted value comes in. So the next one is the teaching in masses on Udemy and Skillshare. And that's where I've learned from experience, Udemy and Skillshare, let's stick with Udemy. Almost everything, drops to $10. If I'm lucky enough that people came in and used my coupon, I'll get almost $10. Otherwise, I get like $3, $3 to $5. I do have a big interest in it. Again, this is more like, I'd say it's also not, let's pretend like I did one on Photoshop or something, right? The audience size could be really big, and some people make a lot of money doing that stuff. I don't think AutoHotkey now, desktop automation maybe, or RPA type stuff, could have a potential size, to really do some make a lot more money in selling, but yeah, AutoHotkey on its own is pretty niche. It's not a lot of investment time overall. Obviously the ongoing work as a scale is nothing, because I answer a couple questions that people ask. It's no big deal. And there's really zero cost. There's nothing. So that's that. The teaching the specific audiences, that one, I think like I could easily sell like a course on web scraping or automating Excel or SPSS. This is what I'm good at. That one could be $200 to $300 for businesses, right? And they would pay for that. They'd pay for their employees to go through it. I have a huge level of interest in it. Unfortunately, there's not nearly as many people that are going to be paying for it. But the investment time, it does have to be a more polished course, and actually edited, which I don't right now. I wasn't doing before, editing my videos. I just shoot them in one take. So it's going to take me more time to create the videos and have them, with takeaways and fade in and out and all the fun stuff. But again, the ongoing is nothing. The work as it scales is really virtually nothing. And the additional cost is nothing. So this one comes out to be a pretty nice number. This next one here, and Jackie, this is where we didn't discuss this too much earlier, but the whole coding and consulting. So like I said, people, and now if you guys are interested, I have people that I pay to do automation stuff, right? So I'm not doing the coding, but I understand the whole front end of it and what needs to get done. And so I set it up, but it's, unfortunately you end up doing a lot of people management and client management, and that's the stuff that I don't have a lot of interest in. It's pretty good audience size. However, here we go in these two, right? It takes more time up front to get the business going, and really if I want to push it, but also as it scales, unless I hire someone to do the work, right? There's no easy way to scale that, right? It's going to take my time and energy, or someone's time, and then there's some investment costs. So that one is a fair amount lower when we look across these things.
It's most likely the lowest one, and we talked about the coding and consulting on top of the AutoHotkey community, because a lot of people at some point start talking about how can I make money with AutoHotkey, and sure enough, you can do stuff like coding, consulting, finding automation gigs or whatever, and you can get some pay from that. And I was a freelance paid employee at one point doing AutoHotkey stuff, and I don't remember exactly what I asked for, but maybe $30 or $40 or something an hour.
Yeah.
And I was typing away and was having fun automating stuff, so it was fair enough. But it was also my free time when I wasn't actually at work, so it was time I wasn't spending with my family. And then the $40 an hour just couldn't compare to a normal Danish salary and taking time away from my family. So right. With those things in mind, it's hard to really make money writing AutoHotkey code. You can make some money. You can find a good project and you can make a lump sum from it. But expecting to make a living from AutoHotkey on its own, that's something else.
Yeah, I would even add to that just a little bit. First off, and I think everyone watching this knows, you're definitely not going to make a living off of writing AutoHotkey code for people from the AutoHotkey forum, right? Because on average, they're and they'll tip you, they'll give you a few bucks, but it's not paying by the hour, right? At least I sure hope it's not, because I'd be really insulted. Now I think you're right, Jackie. We've typically we're at like anywhere between $40 an hour to like $80 an hour, depending on the immediacy of their need and what the complexity of what they're doing, and whatnot, right? It ranges, but it's somewhere in there. It's not a ton of money. Then you have taxes taken out and everything, right? So it takes a certain person in a certain position that can make a living, quote unquote, at that rate, right? I mean, it's not terrible money, especially if you're right out of high school or something. It's not bad at all. But if you're in your 30s to 40s, it's not a long career.
Let's say someone has an automation task they want done, or a GUI they want happen, or web scraping, whatever, and you think, I can do that in 5 to 8 hours or something, and you give them a ballpark of 10 hours. So let's put it at 50 an hour. You can make $500 that way. Sure, that's possible. But how many times do you have the chance of doing that with someone who's in the AutoHotkey community? Right. Most of them are learners themselves. Right. Not many people really are looking for coders, not in that aspect, at least.
Right. Yeah, and like I said, now I do have businesses. I had one last week reach out to me, and it was really interesting, Jackie. I don't think we've talked about this. They contacted me, and they actually have it's a medical company, and they are not a pharmacist, but it's where they do blood tests and everything, lab. And they do these lab tests, and their doctors, they're are people, and they're, of course, they get paid a lot of money, but they were using this. They have a industry program, I forget what it's called, but it sucks to work with. So someone, and I forgot to ask him who, had written an AutoHotkey program to simplify working with that software, right? So these guys were already exposed to AutoHotkey, and I didn't ask why, but for whatever reason, that either person's not available or whatever, I don't know. But now they're switching to a new program that is a web-based tool instead of a local program, and their employees are complaining because it's just not easy to work with. So they want a similar tool, and so they reached out, and I had a good conversation. It was nice because they were already familiar with AutoHotkey and understood a lot of the stuff, but it should be, I think, somewhat lucrative job. I still, like I said, I always tell people I'll have a conversation with you. Often, if it's not a lot, it just depends on what it is. I don't want to go there, but yeah, if you guys have work and you're trying to find someone, I either will can help, or I can point you in the right direction to somebody. So anyway, but to your point,
and I think
I just say that it's not every day that you get these bigger projects where you're making huge amounts of money.
And I'd say you as an AutoHotkey person or whatever is probably one of the more visible ones out there.
Yeah.
So the chance of you getting jobs like this are probably a bit higher than the average AutoHotkey coder. And even then, you might be offered to do this or that, and this shows up, but still it's not something that's an easy and saying, if I just keep doing this, I'll be set, right? It's like they show up, you can make an amount, and then you're again struggling to find the next one over.
Yeah, which also, FYI, if you guys are doing any of this stuff, what I always tell them, and a few have, well, one is the only one that I did, where they want to bid by the hour. And I almost flat out refuse to say, no, I'm not working by the hour, because you're not going to want to pay me, for all the learnings I have, right? But one guy, he wouldn't budge, and it was a really big project. We well, not really big, but we made like 10 grand or so from him, so it was decent. But so I finally said, well, 80. That's when I said $80 an hour, and he said, okay. So we made good money, and we still, of course, didn't tie it at all to the amount of hours we worked. I just kind of billed him and stuff, But he was happy and we were happy. But like yeah, I don't like working by the hour. I think you have the wrong focus a lot of the time. Anyway, back to this. So the next column I thought was pretty interesting for me was, and I've been telling Jackie about some of the other tools I've been building, and one of them's like a poor man's listening campaign, because we were talking about MailChimp. Was that 2 weeks ago maybe? And I didn't realize they charge you for the number of email addresses in your list in storage, whether you're using them or not. Is that right, Jackie? You said? Yeah. So we're building a tool that'll use a different channel that doesn't care about how many people are in your list, and they'll be running a database. Anyway, it doesn't matter, but it has potential to sell for, let's say, I could think like easily $10 a month, right? A subscription, something like that, right? Would be, I think, a no-brainer. It's not as advanced, but it's a simple thing. But we could, and we're talking about some other tools we're making, and so the price isn't terrible, right? You could sell it for potentially some money. I have a decent amount of interest in it. The audience size, if you pick the right thing, right, in that right niche, it could be enormous. Now it's going to take some marketing know-how and some skills and creating a website, a lot of other work. That's why this investment cost is like if I'm doing this, I either have to invest my own time or pay someone to create the software, which is more likely to what's going to happen, and I handle the marketing of it. But again, and Jackie, we were talking about this. We didn't say, we kind of came to the conclusion. It really depends on the software itself, on how complex it is, right? On that ongoing work as it scales, because some things will be very simple, but often those are going to be a lower dollar thing, right? That you're charging for. And then the more, and I don't think it's a direct correlation, but the more expensive it is, the more likely they're going to expect support. You think that's a fair?
It's an okay way of putting it, because you would probably set your price point higher if the thing you've made can do so much more, and it becomes that much more complex.
Right.
So sure, either your monthly fee or whatever should cover that part of it, so you had others to do support, or else you would have to use a fair bit amount of time yourself when it becomes complex. But if it's pretty straightforward, I know I used the example of Google earlier. I don't think that search bar with a single button originally had that many support hours logged, but as time went on and when they added AdWords, sure enough, you needed to pay to do it, and then support started showing up. Yeah.
That reminds me, I had another idea. I can't remember if I told it to you, but I'm keeping it private, so I don't want to say it during here. But I think it has a real potential to make some money. But I'll try to remember after we're done with this. Sorry, everyone else watching. Okay, so anyway, this one was this one has potential. You picked, if you select the right thing to invest in, I think it's got potential, right? Don't pick something especially that's gonna take a lot of time and have I don't know. I mean, to me, I don't want to become a support shop unless I start hiring people to do the supporting and scale it. Then that's okay. But I don't want to spend my time walking people through over troubleshooting stupid thing, like that. I don't have to.
And as you're saying, it depends on whatever software you make. If you make a piece of software to help non-techie people use another piece of complex software, like the doctors or whatever you had earlier, then the chance of you needing to support them, for them to actually set up or use the tool you've made, is higher than if you're just doing something with an open API somewhere and you just have a simple tool where they enter the thing and they get the return, and that's it. Right.
I was going to say there's it's a new feature in Excel, relatively new. If you have a cell highlighted here and like you had copied it, and then you go to another program and you copy it and then you come back to Excel and paste, it will paste what's in column L here. It just disregards what you had on the other thing. Mm-hmm. And that was one that it drives me batty, and I kept thinking like I should make a tool to just, fix that, because it's a security feature in Excel, but it drives me nuts. So anyway, something like that, like everyone says, well, what could possibly go wrong, right? But you'll have a couple of calls of like, hey, this isn't, I copied and pasted twice and it didn't work. Yeah, that's not what it's for. But you can have something so simple that it really has like zero support. Yeah. Okay, so this one, let me scroll down this way. So there's the library of AutoHotkey Code. Okay, price we can sell it for. Okay, that's like nothing. $5 to $10 a month probably. Max, I think. My level of interest in it. I'd even put this. And I'll be fair. I love the idea. I mean, I'm interested in it. It's just the audience size again is tiny. The investment time on its own, if we were to create it, it would take a lot of time. But my thought is I'll be doing other stuff. So it isn't too much on its own. I'd have to look into some software and have it licensed. I know Jackie knows a lot about that. So that wouldn't be terrible. But again, this is actually a good one. It scales, even if there is no actual market for it. It does scale. But I would have to be upfront, and spending either some, like when I paid Maestricht for developing code, and he would be putting in there. So I'm the one kind of funneling that on our projects. So that one turns out to be, like, compared to everything else, just sadly the biggest loser overall when we look at it this way. It doesn't mean it won't ever happen, but honestly, what would probably happen is, as we're doing other things, we'll just make stuff and give it away, right? Because we're just not going to make money, anything worth really even the effort. I'd much rather feel better, which is what Maestricht wants to do too, is just give the code away, and just maybe have good libraries. This is one of the things, and Jackie, we've talked about this in the past too, with AutoHotkey, when you download AutoHotkey, it has some default, like, here's how you do Excel. And I think they have one for web scraping and a couple others. And if AutoHotkey if someone set it up and said, here are the things for Excel and for web scraping and for PowerPoint and for, whatever else, I think it really might lift AutoHotkey up, even if you're charging for it. But I mean, we just need, I think it's one of the disadvantages of a nonprofit with no one in, quote unquote, in charge. You got 8 million people saying their solution's the best solution. And so it hinders AutoHotkey because no one says this is the right one without getting either their feelings hurt or, getting someone else mad at them.
Yeah. I recently had a meeting at my work, at my job. What do I say? It doesn't matter. And there was someone who came and presented these RPA robots.
Oh.
And to management or whatever you call those. So it was kind of a flyover, right? It was fairly aloof.
Yeah.
And it was okay, but at one point I couldn't really hold back, and I said, what's the reason? And I actually knew the answer, but I still asked the question, for us to have chosen UiPath, which is the one we had.
Yeah.
And he really couldn't answer it. It was something about us being able to work together with an IT company that had chosen that language, and they would then make sure that everything was well documented, and they would have the resources in-house to do the code changes and then the updates of the robots and whatnot. And I've heard that before. They don't want to have a single IT guy who can write and edit
Right.
these code bots. And
Right.
fair enough, they now have a contract with another company that they can then say, you have not delivered. Fair enough for a company of that size. But to me, when they use an entire meeting on actually emphasizing that the bot is vulnerable to program loads and to any type of change. So let's say most of our infrastructure is slowly being shifted to Microsoft 365,
Mm.
and Microsoft, they update when they see fit, so to speak. So it's 365. Oh, this interface over here with enterprise as a management, we've removed a few fields and those columns are now in another place. The bot will stop working.
Right.
It has no way to handle it because it's just image recognizing.
Right.
And to me, that's a low par bot. It's just, I was amazed when Tank was one of the first to say that that's mostly what they do.
No.
I'm pretty sure they're still doing some of the more simple things that you would see with the very old script writer that came with AutoHotkey. It would probably wait for a window to exist and a window to be active, and then it would check a pixel sum or whatever if something exists, and then it will click there if the user clicked there and whatever and whatnot. Something that you can make pretty reliable, as the bots are running on their own virtual desktops. There's no interference. There's nobody who's going to be moving the window to some other location.
Yeah.
So some of the stuff that I heard over the time is that they didn't even seem to use relative coordinates. They used absolute coordinates. So when the window opened, the bot would make sure to move it to a specific location so that the field was at exactly 800 times 600 on the screen. And it's okay that someone has managed to make that a big thing, that people are hiring expensive consultants and firms to do. But yeah.
What I was going to say, to me, these companies like yours go out and hire these big companies like UiPath or Automation or whoever, right? Because they look at the sexy AI, all this amazing stuff their tool is capable of. And then they go to implement, and this is where, see if you agree with me on this, because it's such a new area and there's, people getting hired left and right, they don't have a background in it. And also, of course, it gets back to that working by the hour kind of thing too, right? They're under a deadline. They can't make it fancy. So they don't use their Ferrari tool to do this amazing job. They just get something working, right? And you're like, and maybe sometimes they actually get someone like Tank who knows it well and will design it well and can do it really fast because he's been doing it for so long. But I'll bet you a lot of times it's more about the actual person designing that bot that they just don't have either the experience or the time, or both to do a better, robust, solution.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure that the tools, UiPath and whatnot, have quite an amazing built-in amount of capabilities, because it would be weird to have made a Windows automation software that wouldn't be able to recognize a specific window or whatever it might be. And as you have seen, someone who did it all in, what was that, UIA type automation and whatnot. Those things, each time a company like UiPath land a big contract, they're making money. they're developing their tool.
Sure.
They're making sure it can do even more. So at some point in the future, whenever that is, their bots will most likely be simpler and more robust
Smarter.
than
Yeah.
using an AutoHotkey script.
Right.
Because they're the ones making the money. We have the fan base, sure, but they'll get a fan base as they get more and more popular. And we will probably still just be this small open source scripting language that very few people know about.
We're the poor man's, desktop automation solution.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But honestly, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Right. It's, hey, it can do a lot, even, right now, and it's been doing it for years. And yeah, there'll be other tools later on that can do more, and they do more now. But it's, hey, the amount of time and effort it takes you to do an AutoHotkey, and it's free and open source. Yeah, I'll take it.
Yeah. To me, it's like, I'm unsure of how much money my company is paying this other company, plus the UiPath licensing, and the paying for each 24-hour slot that we have available. So each time 24 hours are filled up, then you'll need to pay for another bot slot and pay monthly for that, or whatever type of thingy they have going. The chance of that being less than an employee, a coder or two, or whatever, where you say simply, or a small team, or whatever the amount of people that are needed, you cannot make an automation type thing without documenting it.
Well, yeah. I was going to say also, if you had those, let's say 2 employees doing this, the other thing with AutoHotkey, hey, I can make as many scripts as I want, right? With those bots, you get that, and it can do one thing at one time. And yeah, you apparently a lot of the licensing will say, well, you can do this for 4 hours, and then switch and have it do that for 5 hours. But you can't have it doing multiple, right? You can't just create all these bots. That's different licensing again for each one of those. And yeah, that's.
Yeah, and that's why I'm saying, as soon as you get to just any amount of scale, where you have more tasks than whatever, I don't know the price of whatever it is, but it is something. And if you say, okay, I don't know what people are paid on a monthly basis, but let's say that a license of that type costs $1,000 a month.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, then you have 10. Right. Because you actually created enough stuff that's making you money around the company to have 10, 24-hour slots going to get it all done. Then it's 10,000 a month. Okay, then we should be close to some kind of salary allowance within that amount. And then you will have it in-house. You wouldn't also be paying the other company for doing the programming, and you might own the source, but you are not allowed per contract to edit the source. You just own it because at some point you might want to switch company and whatever.
So sorry to interrupt, but let's bring that back into this, because I think, Jackie, what you're bringing up is actually, it really is a really good point. Is I could have put in here basically doing what I did for TI, right? And what you somewhat do now, right? Is you could actually be an automation expert for a specific company and make some decent money and not have to travel, because those people, they have to travel, like Automation Anywhere and stuff client, they're traveling. Tank, when he was doing it, he's traveling everywhere all week, right? And comes back like Thursday night and spends Thursday, Friday, Saturday home, Sunday. And so yeah, that could have been another column in here, but I don't have an interest in working for a company overall, but it is, you could make some good money that way, because that company, especially like at TI, I gave my code to 50, 60 peers, and suddenly it's scaling for them for TI, right? So it was worth it.
Yeah, the thing is, I know from UiPath at my company is people are making stuff on their local computer. They can start it with a hotkey. It can start on an action. It can start every time they start up the computer. It can start at 2 o'clock at night, but their computer just needs to be running. Okay, how do you get around that?
Right.
Give them their own virtual desktop
Right.
that runs 24/7 on the server. And then most of the issues that people would have with an AutoHotkey script is void, because you don't no longer have user interaction. You no longer need to have time when you are using the computer. Just by doing that simple thing of removing the script from the user's computer and giving the script its own computer, all of the things that people are struggling with, oh, my window moved, or it was
Right.
resized, or whatever it was, it's just not a thing anymore. And that's what UiPath, as an example, is already doing. So it is not something that is really a plus, so to speak, because it's something you could just as easily do without a hotkey. Hire a person that can do AutoHotkey, give them an amount of virtual desktops in the cloud that would cost you almost nothing, and let them automate any amount of tasks on there.
Right.
And you would have almost the exact same setup as you would with one of the more expensive things. So yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Well, I hope this was interesting to people. Let us know if you disagree with some of these numbers or you think they'd be different. Add some in the comments here. Or if you think, especially, I'd love to hear if you think there's something else we should have included in this, like the cost to acquire a new customer, someone had mentioned to me, or the added benefit of you're building a client list or an email list where you can reach out to people. That's something I considered taking into account of, hey, that's a benefit I could do. Those are two things that maybe should have been here, but if you think of something else to add, that'd be great.
Yeah,
Awesome.
sure.
Well, thanks, Jackie. It's good talking to you.
Absolutely, Joe. Yeah, it was.
Sure. Bye-bye.
Bye.